You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Thursday. Normally, I start this off by saying, you know what that means? Coming with a second episode, because I want to do an episode, I want to do two today, because Michigan named its team captains. Cade McNamara was one of them. I think it's important to discuss that. So, Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I am your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. And we're getting right back into it with finally the team captains. Michigan named 5 team captains. They were voted on by the players. And of those, you have Mazi Smith, Mike Sainristil. Those are your defensive representatives. Representatives? I don't know where that was going. Then you also have Cade McNamara, as mentioned, Ronnie Bell for a second straight year, and Eric All. So it was pretty much right on what I guessed, right? I was asked by some fellow media members, like, who do you think is going to end up being the team captains? The only one I didn't have was Eric All, but I had guessed 4, and we were all kind of in consensus. Some were saying Jake Moody could be one of them, or it could be Mike Morris instead of Mazi. I thought it was going to be Mazi due to the fact that Mike Morris was talking about what kind of leader Mazi Smith was. So not at all surprised as far as that's concerned. Not at all surprised as far as Mike Sainristil. Honestly, any of them, but Mike Sainristil being a guy that, like Eric All, they've both been, they started coming on spring 2019. And even though we didn't really see the production, I'd say until last year, really, from either, it was no surprise that those two ended up being on there. I think Cade McNamara is only surprising if you were just absolutely hell-bent on the idea that J.J. McCarthy was going to come in during fall camp, especially after having missed spring ball, if these players were just going to kind of overlook what Cade has done in his Michigan tenure in favor of the new hotness. And that's just not how things work in a locker room, right? So, Cade McNamara is probably your starting quarterback. I think that probably is the indicator. Doesn't mean he'll retain the job, but it does mean that at least out of the gates, at this point in the season, that's how the players are viewing him, as being a starter. Now, with everything we've heard about his fall camp, and I still see people kind of giving pushback on some of these things, right? You still see people saying like, well, JJ is just more talented. Graham Mertz might be more talented than most of the quarterbacks in the Big Ten. But he threw 10 touchdowns and 11 interceptions last year, right? Sometimes being more talented doesn't equate to success. Graham Mertz is probably, from a pure talent standpoint, better than Stetson Bennett IV. Yet one of them was a walk-on who won a national championship with Georgia, and the other one is just languishing up in Madison. You know what I mean? Talent takes you so far. But he clearly has the vote of confidence from his teammates. And Mazi Smith talked about, hey, like, really, really like the fact that he's just been a leader that at that quarterback position. And keeping in mind, by the way, this is the first quarterback to be named an outright team captain in the Jim Harbaugh era. Now, Shea Patterson, to his credit, was an alternate captain. And I believe he kind of had that title bestowed on him by the end of the year, where he was like a team captain due to injury or whatever. I don't remember exactly how that worked. He was an alternate, though. But now you have a bona fide team captain. He's a bona fide leader. And I think the really interesting stuff is some of the things that were said by Mike Sainristil. I pointed back to that Rutgers game in 2020. You pointed back to the speech that everyone loves so much. Like, what if we went out, boys? You know, that speech. But as much as some people like laughed at that speech, it galvanized the team, right? Yeah, they didn't win the next game against Penn State. Cade got hurt in the first half. Defense had its moments, but still wasn't quite there. And then from there, the team rattled off, seven wins before losing to Michigan State. Wasn't Cade's fault. There will be some people, certainly, who say it is, because no matter what, you know, like I remember getting into an argument online when I had taken a picture of a Shea Patterson. It was an interception, but he threw it to Nico Collins, and you can make the argument that, yeah, it was a little late, but you know what? As your quarterback, you're surveying the field. There's a lot going on, making what seems to be the right read still, you know, even when you maybe have pressure in your face, all that kind of stuff. That's all part of it, right? But he made the throw to Nico and put it where only Nico could get it. Problem was, Nico caught it high, but didn't secure it, was dropping his hands. It got ripped out of his hands by a Rutgers defensive back, which is rare for Nico Collins. That's not really how he tended to operate. But of course, people said it was Shea's fault. But even though that was the type of play where it was like, well, that was a pretty good throw by Shea. Yeah, might have been a little late, but people say that about Cade McNamara a lot. You know, he's late, he's not perfect. And one of those things, like we've talked about on this show a bunch of times, is quarterbacks never are perfect. So it's kind of weird that perfection is always expected, right? Because if you go and you look at, watch Tom Brady, he's not perfect. He misses throws. There's some times where you watch Tom Brady and he has the old Devin Bush line that I like from when they were playing football on the beach. Like, what was you throwing at? You know? There are just moments where it's like, what are you doing, man? And that's the best of all time. No one is always perfectly crisp, always throwing everything right where it needs to be. Cade, to his credit, has done a very good job at the pre-snap reads, recognizing defenses, and usually not making the risky throw. And even of his 6 interceptions last year, not every one of them was his fault. That's the crazy part of it. But he still threw for 64.2%. That's a pretty good number. About 5 years ago, that would have been considered exemplary. The unfortunate thing is we've seen the proliferation of some ultra high level talented quarterbacks. Tua Tagovailoa made the opposite had the opposite issue yesterday on the forthcoming Locked On it's a Locked On National College Football Preview show that called Talia Tua. But it's Tua Tagovailoa, Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, all these people, CJ Stroud, they've kind of ruined that idea, right, of being able to just like throw for 60 plus percent and have it be like, oh wow, pretty good. Which makes me kind of curious just a little bit when we're looking at completion percentage. I mean, last year Will Rogers led the country, 73.9. CJ Stroud was third, 71.9. Obviously really good numbers. Keeping that in mind, I mean, Cade McNamara was 38. That's not too bad. It's only 0.3 percentage points behind Stetson Bennett and Caleb Williams, who everyone's pretty high on. But 2020, Mac Jones, 77.4. Justin Fields, 70.2. Trevor Lawrence, 69.2. 2019, Joe Burrow, 76.3. I mean, these are just insane numbers, right? 73% from Jack Abraham. I don't even know who that is, but Gardner Minshew was 70% there. Dwayne Haskins, 70.3. May he rest in peace. In 2018, Tua Tagovailoa and Kyler Murray both at 69%. Baker Mayfield at 70.5% the year before. But most of these people, Cade would have been 15th in the country in 2017, and he would have been actually about the same in 2016. right? It used to be if you hit 70%, you were doing otherworldly things, but it's college football has changed, man. He would have been good enough pretty much all these years. I'm just continue to scroll here. He would have been like right there in like the top 20 pretty much any other year. It used to be if you hit 70%, you were doing something crazy good. So it's funny how that works. But let's continue talking about the Cade McNamara as a team captain, first in the Jim Harbaugh era to be voted on as a pure team captain. But listen, as you gear up for fall, you need the right people on your team to help your small business fire on all cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find people that you want to talk to faster and for free. Create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job in the purple #hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so your network can help you find the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates that you want to talk to, and they do it faster. Did you know that every week, nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, I think this is really huge news that Cade McNamara was named a team captain. It's not surprising to me. It might be surprising to quite a few of you out there because you just had it in your heart that J.J. McCarthy was going to come screaming out of that locker room in game 1, regardless of being out in spring ball. And there's this kind of manifestation that's happened that Cade McNamara has reached his ceiling and there's no way for him to get better. According to him, which jibes with the practice observers I've talked to, or observer, I'm not going to add an S to that. I've talked to one. It jives with Dave Rebson and Big Ten Network and all the things that they had to say about Cade. Remember, he said that he did not see the ball hit the ground when Cade McNamara was in at quarterback. And now you also have Cade McNamara out there saying today in the press conference we talked to all 5 of the newly minted team captains, all 4 newly minted. One gets to retain that role in Ronnie Bell. But Cade said he's gotten a lot better. I'm playing the best football in my life right now. And he talked about footwork being a big key to the accuracy. And he's talked about, I feel like I recognize defenses better. I'm being more accurate. I'm making better reads. I've shortened the amount of how I move my arm. He's like, I'm not wasting any. There's no excess energy coming. Then you also have people like Eric All saying, listen, people say that, Cade can't run. He can move. He's got speed. He just isn't doing a lot of cutting and things like that we've seen from J.J. McCarthy. So I think there's a lot at play here, right? Because people have tended to kind of get this idea, and it's not the wrong idea, right? Jim Harbaugh has talked about, well, I asked him this and he said it was astute. So I got a feather in my cap, a little bit of a brown nose. But I asked him at Big Ten Media Days, because he's always said, like, players make the biggest leap from game 1 to game 2. So I asked him, I said, what about year 1 to year 2? And he's like, oh, that's pretty astute. So I know that we're all kind of thinking that that's going to be the case with J.J. McCarthy, because usually you do see that jump from freshman to sophomore. I think with some players, it might be more sophomore to junior, right? Thinking of guys like Jeremy Gallen, I remember having my number 10 jersey that I got at TJ Maxx here in Ann Arbor when I was a student. And then I'd wear it when we go to, you go to a bar in LA, to like an alumni association sanctioned watch destination location to watch Michigan games with fellow fans or whatever. And People be like, oh, that's a great Tom Brady jersey. And I'm like, oh, it's a Jeremy Gallon jersey. And at that time, that was really funny. And then fast forward to 2011, he's making all these plays against Notre Dame. The next year, he's going nuts. So that can happen, right? Players can get better, even when it seems like, ooh, that player is not. Stevie Brown. It's another one I can think of where it was just like him being out there felt like a liability. And eventually, he ended up being pretty good. But for Cade McNamara, for whatever reason, there's a lot of people that just say, oh, he's hit his ceiling. You know what you're going to get that you don't. And I know we talked about this, I think, last week. I'm not saying he's going to become Joe Burrow. I am not. But no one on this earth, except for Joe Burrow and maybe his mother, thought that he was going to take the leap forward that he took going from 2018 to 2019. Nobody. Let's go back to the stats because it's alarming, right? Now, to go to 2018, and I've got this sorted by just passing completion percentages. I'm not finding him quickly, right? I have to scroll a little bit. There he is, number 79, 57.8 through 16 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. Now I can click on him here, and we can look and see what he did the next year. The next year, Joe Burrow, 76.3, 60 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 5,761 yards compared to 2,894 the year before. He had a worse passing completion, more yards by about 250 yards. He had, I think, close to the same touchdown interception ratio, 133.21 rating, 222.6 yards a game, almost 30 attempts per game. So, just to take a look at what Cade McNamara did last year, 64.2, 2576. He threw about 23 times a game, so 6-7 less for 184 yards. One less touchdown, 15. One more interception, 6. Passer rating higher, 141.87. Anything can happen, man. Michigan's got the tools to make that happen, right? Now, I'm not confident that that's necessarily going to happen, right? Because Jim Harbaugh is still the head coach. I don't know that they'll just go full on, I'm not saying like actual air raid, but just like aerial assault. But maybe they will. If they go out there in week 1 and are like, all right, let's start getting this going. Let's do what we were used to seeing teams like Ohio State do when they play a lesser team. Actually, Ohio State in week 1, I mean, they still have pretty good stats, but it always seems like week 1 when Ohio State's playing like Akron State Community College University, it always seems like somewhere in the third quarter, me and my best friend are texting each other being like, oh man, Ohio State's only up by 1 and Akron State Community College University is driving. Then it's like, oh, in the time that it took for us to send a text and then reply to the next, Ohio State somehow scored 35 points. You know what I mean? It's like every year. Like they find themselves in a dogfight, but by the time everything's done, it's like they've scored 55 unanswered points. Maybe that's what Michigan will end up being. They have the weapons to do that. All across the board. They've got the protection with the offensive line. They've got the receivers. They've got 2 incredible running backs that can do different things. They've got the tight ends. They could do that. Cade McNamara has an opportunity to do that. And in a way, wouldn't you kind of want that? JJ continues to develop. I'm sure he'll see his time. I don't think he's going anywhere. Even if he had to sit the whole year, I just don't. He knows his time's coming. He could go out there And I think it would be probably better while Michigan has like a for sure great collection of playmakers, because you're going to lose some going into next year. You're definitely going to lose Ronnie Bell. Imagine Cornelius Johnson. I mean, a lot of these guys have an extra year of eligibility, of course, but definitely going to lose Cornelius Johnson. Some of them are going to be around still. Andrell Anthony, obviously, the guys that were freshmen. You know, AJ Henning, I think, is going to be dynamic. You could lose a lot of those guys. Like Corum, if he has the type of year that many think he could be, he could be gone. So you almost would rather have the quarterback that is so talented that he could make your team just that much better. You know, you want Cade to maybe be that guy. All right, so let's continue on. I want to talk about an article that I put out real quick. 8 Michigan football 2022 predictions that we are, as in I always use the royal I, we are certain of. But before we do, listen, betonline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your betting needs. Find all of your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, sport scores, and podcasts. They have you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, you've got about 8 minutes left here to record, which is fine. I'm going to do a second podcast literally as soon as I'm done with this one. So if you're feeling like you're not getting enough with football, I mean, Big Ten football's about 2 days away. Michigan football's 9 days away. You know, there's still going to be more. 30 more minutes. But we'll push this one close to 30. But I do want to talk about my arbitrary 8. And the reason why I came up with 8 Michigan football 2022 predictions that I'm certain of to contrast with bold predictions. It's because I went back and looked at like some of my old articles from like week 1 of Wolverines Wire, June 2018. And I did something similar. So I was like, let's do that again. You know, just try to find things that I can write while I'm waiting for a press conference. That said, just because I'm certain of it doesn't mean that it's going to happen, right? I think there's always something every year from every team where you're like, yeah, this is going to happen. There's no way it's not. And then something happens and it's not that way. But these are the things that I feel confident in. Number 1 is the one that I feel most confident in, is that this defense will still be among college football's best. Now, whether that means being in a top 10 or being a merely just top 30, I think it will be somewhere in that range. Now, there's reasons that can certainly be the case. I mean, you look at the schedule, what offenses are really going to challenge Michigan outside of really 3, right? Maybe 4. When I look at the schedule, I think, okay, Maryland, Michigan State, Penn State, Ohio State. That's it. And even when you look at Penn State, I'm not sure their offensive line is going to be good enough. But maybe a guy like Sean Clifford goes ham. I don't know. Maybe Nebraska's in that. Maybe Casey Thompson is the answer there. I don't know. But I have a lot of faith in Jesse Minter, which makes it that much more. Again, I'm not rooting for Michigan here. But I am rooting against idiot Buckeye fans that love to come into every mention that no, they don't come in every mention, but they come into a lot of mentions. I am rooting against them because that's fun for me. When they are all sitting there laughing, Michigan hired Vanderbilt's guy, party har 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 har, just completely overlooking the fact that he came from the Baltimore Ravens. As if that's not like a pretty big feather in one's cap, right? To be a position coach at one of the like premier 3 teams in the NFL that's known for having an insanely good defense. I mean, they've had generally an insanely good defense for the last 20 plus years. So, I think that he's going to be really good. And, continuing the scheme, not a lot of changes. The players feel like it's year 2. That's the only thing that matters, right? Number 2, the offense will not live up to fan expectations. I say that coming after I'm like, maybe Cade could be Joe Burrow. Listen, I've watched enough Jim Harbaugh to know it's probably going to have a little bit of a governor on it. But it might not be the way that you think, in the sense of, like, I'm not thinking 2019 Army game. I'm thinking more 2016, right? 2016, it seemed like, aside from about 4 games, but out of like the other 8, those games, well, yeah, most of them, it felt like the game was over by halftime. UCF, Hawaii, not Colorado, not Wisconsin, Penn State, Maryland. It was halftime, and you're like, what do we do now? Like, I got to stay on the field for the rest of this? That's how it felt. So I think it could be one of those situations. The game's already out of hand. All right, backups, get in there and see what you can do. And it's just not going to be as sharp. Maybe it will be. I mean, on Big Ten Network, they talked today. Dave Revson said, like, this is a team with a lot of depth. They just keep coming. It's like Ohio State. So maybe that's it. Some of these are self-explanatory. Number 3, Mozzie Smith will be a monster. Number 4, Cade McNamara will start. Number 5, Ronnie Bell will look like he hasn't missed a beat. Number 6, special teams will be elite again. I mean, I feel like these are all self-evident. Number 7, Donovan Edwards will burst onto the national scene. I definitely think that's true. But that's one of those things where, maybe it isn't. That's where I have a little bit of skepticism. Just because I feel like, I personally feel like so much like this dude is just going to be a monster. But I guess I'm somewhat snake bit by the other Donovan that came through Ann Arbor. It was very good, not elite. Right? No offense, Donovan Peoples-Jones, but you didn't have elite production in Ann Arbor. So maybe I'm a little snake bit by that. Number 8, and final one, Michigan will not simply cede the game to Ohio State. Now, I want to talk about that briefly, even though we've talked about Ohio State quite a bit lately, because I just want to continue hammering this home. And I guess this is for the sicko Buckeye fans that are listening to this for whatever reason. And listen, I don't hate you. I don't hate you. I think you need to calm down a little bit. I think it's ridiculous when someone hates someone else because of their sports affiliation, whether it's fandom, media, all of that stuff. I think it's ridiculous. There are more important things in life than to hate someone for something that is essentially just communities. But I think one of the things that I find really obnoxious this year is the mixture of two things. Number one, this Ohio State's got a new defensive coordinator. Ohio State is fixed. Versus Michigan's got a new defensive coordinator. Michigan football is doomed. I think that's really weird. But also just this narrative that you beat Ohio State. That's it. You got your win. Now they're angry. Good luck winning another game in the next 10 years. Not going to work like that. If it was Penn State, the way Penn State won in 2016, fair, right? They stole one. That's how that game went. Michigan didn't steal the game last year. Michigan went out and took it by force. Not guaranteeing that Michigan will win this next game against Ohio State. That's going to be tough. It's going to be in Columbus. I mean, I am putting on paper that that's what I anticipate. I don't know anything, just like no one else knows anything. Anyone who claims to know anything is just predicting, right? But it's just this Ohio State's angry, so sorry, Michigan. It's not going to work like that. Michigan is very talented on both lines. I think Michigan has the better offensive line. I think Michigan has the better defensive line. And I think that will play a big part because I think Michigan's got a lot of skill players that can do a lot of the same things that the Ohio State guys can. So we'll see. All right, we're running out of time, so that's going to do it for podcast number 1. So stay tuned for the second one. Thank you for watching and or listening. Peace.